Hello everybody, Michael Osmond here. It's winter time, so not a lot of gardening going on. So as usual in the winter time, I do some different projects. And like some of you may, what I've been doing, and I've done two so far, is cutting my door in half, making a Mr. Ed door, or kind of a barn door for those of you not old enough to remember who Mr. Ed is. So the top will swing open and close separately from the bottom, and they can hook together to act as one solid door, which works out nice. I'm doing that, we're doing that because to keep our pets out of the bedroom and being able to open the top part of the door and allow airflow in and out. So, you know, and we can try to make it look nice too. I've done two. We have a 3-bedroom home, and I've done two, and they turned out really well. So I thought I'd share this one, how to do this. Full disclaimer, I'm not a carpenter, I'm not a cabinet maker, just a guy, you know, trying to muddle through projects like this the best I can. And I'll show you what I do, and hopefully you like it. So one thing I've learned is masking tape. Masking tape your door before you cut it. That'll keep it from splintering. Because when you cut it, the ends of the board will kind of splinter. And you know, we want to keep this looking nice. And I'll be covering most of this with trim, but still, if it splits clear down, you can only cover so much, you know. So the other thing is a nice fine tooth blade on your saw. So I tape both sides because it'll splinter on either side, you know. And draw a nice straight line. You want to make sure your line is level, you know, even on both ends. So we don't want a line that's, you know, sitting cockeyed like this. It's got to be straight across. So I used a T-square. If you don't have one, measure up from the bottom, you know, so both ends, and then draw your line. So you've got a mark at each end. I put my line 4 inches above the handle because I'm going to have a board on top of here, kind of a cap, and it's going to stick out a little bit, kind of like a shelf, you know, and it looks pretty cool. But you don't want your hand hitting that as you try to open the door. So 4 inches seem to be pretty good and work good on my other doors. And when we put the cap on, we're going to put a cap on both the top and the bottom door to cap it because it's a hollow core door. And so we're going to cut it and then take 2 inches out and cut it again. And we'll cut the top section for that so it doesn't get closer to the doorknob. So anyway, gotta get our proper protection. And we'll cut it. We got our blade long enough. Okay. We got a pretty good cut in there. Now you can see a hollow core door. This is mostly just cardboard in here, but we do have 2x4s on the ends. So if you're gonna nail anything or screw anything down, that's where you want to attach it to. Also clamping it. I'm gonna glue all this together. Clamping it, you can kind of bow the center here. So clamp the ends, and that way you don't bow the door and, you know, have it looking bad. So anyway, I'll be right back, set up, and we'll cut the other end. Okay, so the cap, I don't have a cameraman, I'm sorry. Kind of moving things around myself. I'll do the best I can. The cap, though, is 3/4 of an inch thick. And we're going to have a cap on both the top and the bottom door to cover that hollow core that I showed you. So it'll set like this. And we'll have some trim below here. We'll do that first. But that's why we have to cut the extra section out to make room for that. And so this is 3/4 of an inch thick, times 2 is 1.5 inches. And I'm taking 2 inches out to give us an extra 1/2 inch of gap, which obviously you don't want a gap in your door. People peek through, you change in, but we'll cover that up and make it look good too. Here we go. We're not going to cut the sawhorse. And so if we don't cut this perfectly straight, I'm just using a skill saw. So, some of us have varying skills with cutting a straight line. We can fudge some of that with the trim. That's why we have trim, right? Let me show you the door. Now that I've taken the tape off. See, it's nice and clean. There's no chips in here. But if you look on the inside here, you see the, let's see, yeah, see, you see the chips there? That's what would have happened without the tape on the outside. And so that's why we put the tape on there. That helps a lot. That can help save your project. And next, we'll glue the trim down. So I'll be right back. Okay, so I cut this. Now, so when your door closes up against the door frame, you've got that little piece of trim inside of the door frame that the door closes up against. It's only about, looks about like this kind of. It's a little bit thinner, about a 1/2 inch thick, 1 inch wide. And I don't know if they call it doorstop maybe, I don't know. I don't know if I said this or not, but I'm not a carpenter. I'm not a cabinet maker. I'm just a guy trying to, that likes to do things. So we need to make room though for the door to close up against that. If I put this trim all the way up to the edge of the door, that's going to be in the way of the door being able to close on the doorstop. So it's about a 1/2 inch wide. So I made this about 3/4 of an inch shorter on each end to give it room to swing in and out and close on there. So I already marked it, already cut it. So we'll put it in place. Good. Hold it there. And trace it out on the door. Because I'm going to glue this all together. So, whoop, let go. So I just unplugged my sander. But this has a finish coat on it. And the glue isn't going to stick real well, adhere real well to a finish coat. So you want to sand this, but I don't want to sand the whole door. So I marked it out where I need to sand it at. And we'll do that real quick. Okay, I'm just using 180 grit sandpaper. It's fairly coarse, not crazy coarse, but fairly coarse. We'll take the finish coat off. We don't need to take it down to bare wood or anything, which I don't even know if this is real wood. Probably not, but just enough to get past the glaze so that the glue can penetrate and hold pretty well. So the other side I'll do off camera, but it needs to be right flush to the end. So I'll do that, cut the trim, and be right back and we'll glue it. Okay, well, I sanded it down the best I could. Well, there's still a lot of paint in there, but man, I've been sanding forever. So I got it down the best I can. I now see why they use strippers when they remove paint from furniture to refinish furniture. Well, that took forever just to get it down to there. So I'm going to glue it and clamp it. So we got to make sure we get the right end on the right end. So we have one shorter than the other. Short remains on the side that close inside the door frame up against the stopper. I'm using Gorilla Wood Glue. Seems to work. It worked great on the other ones. I just put a liberal amount on there. Yep. Supposed to spread it out nice and evenly so it's all covered. Okay. So we got it on there pretty good. Well, I'm going to shut this side for a second. We have to do the other side and clamp them. together. All right. So we got our line drawn, sort of. So I left this a little bit longer. Going flush with the top, but sticking out on the ends. My first door, I made it nice and flush with the ends, as close as I could get it, and then I couldn't really, I don't know, I couldn't finish the ends as well as I would have liked. So, I leave it sticking out, and then I can sand it down flush when the time comes, and we'll do that. So just get a clamp and kind of hold it in place. Get these right. They have to be right. You can't be close. They got to be right. Ooh. Sticking out of both ends. Hey, that ain't working. So these clamps here, they've got some like them at Lowe's I saw, and they're like 35 bucks each. I bought these at Harbor Freight for $3.50, and they work just fine. They work great. They look about the same as the ones at Lowe's. They're a different brand, but you know, they work really well. So I'm clamping it right on the where the 2x4 is in the door. Get it level, making sure it's sticking out, clamp it down. Now I've got glue everywhere. So I need to clean that up. So I'll clean up all the excess glue, and we'll leave it set. It's flush on both ends, sticking out of the ends, flush on top. This is flush on top. I'll clean up the glue, and I'm going to do the exact same thing to the other side of the door, the bottom half. And we'll let it dry overnight, and then I'll be back tomorrow, probably wearing a different shirt. Bye, thank you. It's been 24 hours. So we can take our clamp off. Got that glue on there. And now we have to do the cap. So I'm going to make it the same length as this. Cut it a little bit longer than the door. Then the other end, which is narrower, I'll turn the door over and show you that. We'll have to notch this out to match. So we'll make it all match on top as the shape of the door is. Earplugs. No cutting the cord. Alright, that'll sit on here. We're going to have to mark this out to fit. So, it's a little bit big, so I'm going to have to draw a line here to cut it so it's the same size, because this is the top section, we want it to match. From the bottom, I'll have to notch it out to match, as you recall, the notches here that go on the door stopper. We got a notch on the inside there. So the top tab has to match that there too. So I'll mark that out. And then we'll be right back. got it marked out. So take a little bit off here for the width. And we got the corners notched out. See if I can do this up, got my fingers up. Round up the saw there a little bit. Not bad. Have to sand that out. It'll be all right. A little sanding, and we'll get her done. All right, so cut the notches out, and I cut the back side out, sanded the marks out of it. So we are going to glue this down on here, just like that. It's just the right width. It's a little bit longer, just like the side pieces, or the one side piece. And so I'm going to glue everything on here, even the cardboard in the center here. Glue everything on here. If some drips down in the center, that's okay, not a big deal. And we'll glue it down and clamp it. And then we'll be right back to start on the bottom. Okay, next, remember we have a 1/2 inch gap between the top door and the bottom door. This is the top section. So we're going to cover that 1/2 inch gap. So I got it all glued up. It sat overnight. We'll take the clamps off. I could use more clamps. I think if you're going to buy some clamps, buy more than you need. More than you think you need. So I'll just so let me show you how this goes. So we're going to cut off a board. And this is about a 3-inch board. Let's see, where's my tape? This is a 3-inch board. It's like one buys. We got it up, so it's about 1.5 inches there. And we're just going to put this, so it's hanging down. We got a gap. Let's see. We'll have a gap like that. Okay, so that's how. So that way, the bottom door will shut up against that. And that'll cover the gap between the top and the bottom sections. So when you close the door, this closes up against it. Now you've got a nice seal between the two doors and a little bit of a cushion space so that if the door winds up sagging or something like that, it's not going to hit the other, it's not going to wind up hitting. You know, it'll still work and function properly. So, not a perfect line, but I'm making it long, so it'll be fine. All right, nice fit. Bring it down. So I'm just going to glue it, clamp it, then we'll start on the cap on the other door. Also, if you wanted to screw this or put some long brads through here, you could put this in, and I put it in on the ends where the 2x4s and the doors are, all the way through, but measure them out. You don't want them poking through the other side. You know, you want it to go through the door and into the other piece of trim. So you could do that on either end and then cover it with this and you never see it. You put a grabber screw in there or a brad in there, make sure they're not too long, and then pop that on, you'd never see it. And if you're not worried about seeing it, just put it through afterwards. That's up to you. Next, we are working on the bottom part of the door. Bottom half, we'll put the cap on it. I'm doing it a little bit differently though. It turned out pretty cool on my last door. Let me show you. So on the top, we made the cap to fit. We made it the same size as all this that we just put on there. This one here, I'm using a 1/2 by 6, which is actually 5.5, but you know, it's a 6-inch board that we'll put on there, so it'll be like a little shelf, which turned out pretty cool. So I am going to mark it to size, cut it out, the one side, and then I'll mark out the notches and cut the notches out just like we did on the other board. But I'm not going to cut it the same size. I'm going to keep it wide, keep it just as wide, keep it hanging out. So the side that I want hanging out is the outside of the room. So the bedroom is on the other side of here. We got the shelf hanging out on the outside. So this will close up to the door frame with the shelf sticking out. So go ahead and do that. Oh, I guess I just measure it, huh? I got a tape measure. Yeah, let's go with 30 and an 1/8. Like I said, I'm not a professional. I make all kinds of dumb mistakes. As long as I catch them before they get too bad. There we go. We'll try that. See, I do this without hitting the camera. Hit the camera. There we go. Okay, let's try it right there. The doorknob instead. Nice, pretty straight cut, huh? And that fits nicely. So next, I just got to mark out the notch here. So I do that, cut that out with the Sawzall the same way I did on the top door. All right, so I've got it cut to match the door, and I went farther over, and then what I'm going to do is put a curve in there. So I'm going to cut that front corner off. So guys, don't be afraid. Go into the kitchen, grab a nice plate, and then you make a curve. So figure out about where you want it on there, and then measure over where the curve's going to be. I'm going right from the corner here, and the curve looked nice at about 3 inches over. That way you can make the other side match. Measure over 3 inches, and then you put the plate in exactly the same place so both sides look the same. So that's what I'm doing. And if you wind up with chips on your plate because you're using it, hey, it's for a good purpose. It's all right. And you see, there's the 3-inch mark. There's the corner. That baby on there just about right. And we'll try that. Clamp it down. Not in your way? Probably am. Let's see. All right. Show you that. So, not bad. So I'll have to take the sander, sand off the corner there a little bit so it's rounded a little bit better. Just touch that up. And now I'm going to router mine with, I've got a router I've had for like 25 years. I've used it like twice. So I can do it, but I don't know that I'm doing it properly. So I don't know if they'll give instructions on that or not. But anyway, I'm going to do the same with the other side. Now you can always sand the edge and make it nice and rounded so it looks nice, and finish it up, and stain it and finish it, and that'll look good too. It doesn't have to be routed by any stretch. In fact, I'll show you the first door I did. I just did that and it looks real nice. We'll show that at the end of the video, all 3 doors. All right, well, I decided to go ahead and router it on camera because, hey, it'll be good for entertainment purposes if nothing else. So I got the sanded off reasonably well, and I'm going to router it right into the corner there. I'm not going to go all the way out to the edge though. That's how I did it in my last one. It looked pretty good. So the edge will leave square for the door. So let's give it a shot, see if I blow it out or rip it apart or if it does good. There, huh? It's not bad. Not bad. There we go. There we go. Put that in there. Not bad. See what I mean about the end though? That looks pretty sweet. Leave the corner there. It'll match up with the door nicely still. Okay, got it cut. A little burnt there. I can touch that up with some sandpaper carefully. But one thing I did not consider, I didn't have this problem on the other door. When I get this all lined up, look at that bottom frame is sticking right out there in the road. I'm gonna have to kind of trim that off and sand it a little bit. I'm gonna do some work on it. So I'm gonna mark it out. I can come forward a little bit. There. Mark it out, and I'll just take my Sawzall, carefully cut it and kind of sand it to make it look nice, and do the same with the other side, and then we'll glue everything, mark the bottom there, glue that, clamp it down, and be back tomorrow. So I was going to put the hinges in today. Here's hinges. I brought hinges that are way too small. Look at this. Let me get up here. Whoa. Crash, bang, boom. These hinges, you can see, are a lot too small. So you want to make sure, if you're going to use hinges, so that's all you got, I mean, it would work. Just line up the pins, so it's in the same place. Don't match it up where the screws go, because then the pin will be in too far and the door won't swing right and it won't close right. So you got to match up that pin. But I'm going to go back to the hardware store and try to get a hinge that matches more closely. Maybe I better use my tape measure, huh? All right, so got some hinges that are pretty close. They're not exact. Let me move the camera in a bit. They're not exact, but they're as close as I could get. So anyway, so what I'm doing, I am going to make a mark at 22 inches and figure out where you want to put the hinge. We want a considerable amount of space between the top hinge or the bottom hinge. It'll be the bottom hinge on the bottom half of the door, the top half, to make sure that the door doesn't flop around. But we don't want it so close to the cut end that it'll split when we put the screw in. And I'll pre-drill the screw, but still, I've just had too many old boards split on me, and 22 inches, we'll put it right there. And that'll give it about 4 inches to the actual top of the door, plus a little bit more for the cap, which should help. That should be all right. That should be far enough down. So that's what I did on the other two doors. It works good. And the hinges are pretty close. They're, like I say, they're not exact. But here's a little trick that I thought would work well. So first, we want to make sure that we got this set in the right way. So the pin is right here. This is the top of the door. So we want the pin on top of this hinge. And you can see it's, if you look at the hinge, there's kind of a side that's flatter than the other and a rolled side. And so anyway, we want it to match that. So we've got the round side inside as best as possible. And so what I'm doing is I'm going to line up that hinge with this just as straight as I can get it, and then mark with the dry erase marker on the top edge so that I can take this down here to my mark. Line it up with the mark there. And line these up with the door. Now I trace this out. Maybe. I'm going to attempt to trace this out. Good grief, I can hold it steady. There. Attempt to trace this out so that thing will sit in there right. We want this to be in line with the other hinge, you know, so that the door will swing right. And so also the thickness, measure the thickness right on top here. I'll get in closer here. All right, so I measured the thickness of the hinge. I've got it marked out. So I will not do that anymore. I'll try to set up the camera a little better so that when we chisel this baby out, you can see what I'm doing and not do what I'm doing, or learn some good tips. Well, hopefully it'll go well and it'll turn out perfect. Okay, so chisel 101, if that. So a chisel, as you know, is shaped with one side has an angle and the other side is flat. So if you're going to sharpen this, and you want this pretty sharp, it doesn't have to be like razor sharp, but nice and sharp, only sharpen this side, and then you'll get a burr on this side. We can kind of, if you run your finger along here, you can kind of feel a little metal overhanging. Just take that burr off, but don't change the angle. You'll leave the backside flat. And that's a pretty simple way to sharpen a chisel. And anyway, as you're using this edge, this way, this direction, with the angle on top, will dig pretty deep into the wood. And this will give you a shallow cut where you can kind of just scrape along the edge. And that's usually how I use a chisel, is that way, with the flat side up. So first, we're gonna mark it all out. We got it drawn out. But first, we're gonna take a razor knife and cut out, score a couple areas, the curved corners and the front here. Then we'll chisel the flat side out with the flat edge towards the line. And we'll start with that first. That'll make sense in a minute. So first, for the thickness, I'm going to score that. And I'll go over things usually lightly at first. And follow it a little bit heavier. Then right at the line, cut them in. Cut them in. Then when this breaks out, because we're going to break all this out, this will break out nice and flat. Then the curves here, if you have a a curved hinge, you want to get the curves, because chisels aren't curved, so you can't really get into them real well with the chisel. Just score the curves best you can. And get down in there a little bit, you know. Make sure we're down in there far enough. And you have to poke it a couple times to work your way around. That's okay too. Okay, and then over here, do the same thing. Aha, there we go, got my light on now. Take your time, don't be in a hurry. I'll fast forward through the really bad parts. We'll try. My editing skills are limited, but I'll do the best I can. So anyway, flat side towards the edge and go just on the inside of the line. We always widen a little bit, but we can't make it shorter. You know, we can't, if it's too big, we can't make it smaller. And we'll chisel out the whole thing that way, just like on the touching the line, but on the inside. Should be just about right. Oh, that jumped. So you, that's something to think about too. You know, we got the grain of the wood caused my chisel to roll a little bit. And probably wouldn't have happened if I would have had a better grip on it. And it'll be all right. Okay, now we're going to cut lines out. And I'm going to go kind of at an angle in and keep them pretty close, like, you know, 1/8 of an inch or so. Not exact, you'll see. Right to the back line there. And try to be pretty consistent with your strikes, going about the same depth, which would be right about to the edge there. You can see that starting to break out already. You might have to repaint some of that. That's all right. I always have to do touch up. All right, now check this out. Yeah, bust that off of there. So remember, flat side up. Just kind of get in there and flatten it out. Careful not to go too far. You can see the edge where we scored it there. We haven't got down to that yet. Oop. So, then you take it and kind of walk it in. Take one side and kind of pivot it. Pivot it in. Pivot it in. And get those high spots
to match low spots. And then the corners, we got to make sure we got these edges and these corners nice and uniform. Now I'm way too deep here in the ink. I'll just take them as paint right off and I'll repaint it. That'll be all right. But see the edge? That's pretty clean. So that'll look nice with the hinge off of that. You know, it's not busted out. Okay, let's see what we got. Now see the marks. But anyway, it's in there. It's pretty level. A little too deep over here. But that'll work. That'll work pretty sweet. Looks like we're setting the same up. So I'll mark it, drill it, and screw it down. Now, the hinges come with one long one and a bunch of little short ones. I don't know which end, if it goes in, the long one goes in the door or into the door frame. So I think they both ought to have a long screw in it anyway. So I'm gonna put one long one in the center here and one long one in the center here when I put it in the door frame, and the other four can be the shorties. So at least that way, you know, it'll be held fairly good, because you know there's potentially a lot of stress on here, and especially on the bottom one if people are leaning on it, because it's now a Mr. Ed door, so we want to make sure it's not going to fall off on us. But that'll work. See, that's nice and pretty. Fits pretty clean. And you can stain that first. I mean, that doesn't look real great there, but who cares? You won't see that anyway. That's covered. So if you want to do better than me, than I did, don't go as deep. I went too deep. You can mark the edge of this with a piece of tape so you don't go too deep. My depth perception isn't great, so I probably overkilled it and went too deep. And just go as deep as you need to, and then work your way down a little bit closer if you want it to look a little bit prettier than that. But the edge here is pretty straight, so that'll look sweet when we're done. And next, I am just going to sand these edges where they're sticking out too much, stain that, touch up some of the paint here, and then we'll put the other hinge in and we'll hang it. And that'll be next. Okay, here we are in my home. Don't invite many people into my bedroom. Come on in. So first, before you come in, this is what we've been using to keep the cats out of the bedroom. We have a couple of cats, and believe it or not, this actually keeps them out. They can jump higher than this quite easily, but we've taught them since they were little that they're not allowed to, so they don't. And if we have this open and they follow my lovely wife into the bedroom, which they occasionally do, and she doesn't know it, puts this back up, they'll sit in here and cry because they can't get out. So they're trained pretty well not to go over these. So I think the Dutch door, and I found out they're called Dutch doors, not Mr. Ed doors. So anyway, the Dutch door has worked pretty well on the other two bedrooms, and so we're going to install it, and I'll show you how I do that. There's probably a million ways to do these things, but this is how I do it and what's worked for me. So come on in here, Cindy, and I'll show you what we need to watch out for and how to make it a little bit easier. So we've got the bottom hinge in, the old hinge, and we're just going to put the pin right back in. And when we've got the hinge that we put in, remember we installed that one, that we've got to now cut it out and screw it in the proper place here. So just going to line this up best I can. There we go. Throw the pin back in. Oops. Come on. There we go. Okay. So we want to be careful because we only got that holding it down there. So if this flops around too much, we can pull the screws out of there, and then we got trouble. So what I do, I just go ahead and it's going to be a little bit tight. Just go ahead and close this. That way you've got it in the right place. And remember our handy dandy dry erase marker. Mark the edge of that. Okay, so I got it marked right up to the wood on top there. It's not a great mark, but it's just, so you can get it in place. And then, when you open this, and that flops around on you, and you come over here, Cindy. You can see the mark right where that needs to go. So I can hold that right there. Hold it in place. I know that's in place right where it needs to go, so it'll close. And then trace this out. And that fits pretty tight along the back there. There's not a whole lot of room on the back there, but that's okay. Now we got it traced out, and back up for me. We pull the pin back out, move the door out of the way. Now I've got it traced out right where it needs to go. So that thing is exactly where it needs to go. And so I'll cut that out the same way that I cut it out on the door. And then the top section, you put your pin in, mark it out the same way, do it exactly the same way. And your door should be hung, even though it's two sections now, exactly the way it was originally. So you're not changing how the door hangs and how the door functions. If it worked well before, it should still work the same way. And I'll do that, and we'll be right back and show you the finished door. So next, also, when you cut all your trim, you're going to want to cut out a little block of wood. So I'm putting that on the bottom door, right even with the top door. I'll show you why. We'll put this to it. So I'm going to drill those out and put some longer screws in and screw it to the door here, right even with the bottom. So that'll be flush. And we'll put the lock right there going into it. So I'll do that next and show you that. All right, we got it. Let's see, get back here. So, gotta make sure that is locked. It's not. So anyway, this is what I was talking about. So we had to put the block of wood in to make this level with this so that the latch would work. So that's the last step right there. And you can put a handle on there if you want, which I did on this one. That'll stay up and out of the way if you want to just open and close it. But let me get back and show you how it works. Top part opens up, and we got it all opened up out there. You can lock it together for privacy. And you see there's not much for gaps here. I'm seeing a little bit of light right through here. But that's pretty good. Other than that, you could make that tighter if you wanted. So the whole thing opens up as a door quite nicely. Get back up here. Ta-da! So, let me show it this way. a little tight. But that looks pretty sharp that way. Pretty sweet. And this is the one I did in the other bedroom. It works quite nice. And it's the same way. I did the 6-inch cap, router top. This one here I did different. This is the first one. I only did a 3-inch top. And I just kind of softened the edges. You know, I didn't router it at all. I just sanded it and softened it. And this is kind of nice. I'll show you this. This is pretty neat. I put a magnet in here. So I chiseled that out, cut that out, and glued a pretty strong magnet in here. And then underneath it here, I put a steel plate, which closes up against there. So it doesn't lock, but works pretty sweet. If you're not worried about your bedroom doors locking, you know, that's an option. They don't have to fight with the latch. I might put a latch on here anyway at some point, but this works nice. She's happy with it. And now we can have the doors open, airflow going through without those stupid security gates, and the animals can't get in unless we let them in. So thank you very much. I hope how to make these Dutch doors, if you want to tackle something like this, you can do it. If I can do it, anybody can do it. Oh, also, let's say you get these over too far and you try to close the door and the door closes on top of the stop. It's too tight. It won't close. You've got the hinges in the wrong place. It's only off by like, you know, 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch. What do you do? So your holes are over too far. You've got to move your hinge over, but you have 2 holes right next to each other. You put 1 hole in, it's going to blow out. You know what I mean? So your option is either to move your hinge, which forget that, or you can plug the holes. So you have to take the door off and take some toothpicks, dip them in a bunch of wood glue, and just cram as many in the hole as you can, each one of the holes. So it's like dripping down, wipe up the excess, let it dry, and take your razor knife and cut those off nice and flush. And that works pretty well. Then you can put your new holes in where you want them and move your hinge over a little bit. So just a trick I learned many moons ago that has worked for me in the past. Thank you. Like and subscribe.